Loops are a fundamental part of programming that automate repetitive tasks. They allow you to execute a block of code repeatedly based on a condition over a sequence of items. In this image, an input goes into a block of code. The output of the block is fed back into the block one or more times, and eventually it produces a final output. Let's look at a real-world example, making pumpkin soup. The recipe treats the soup as the input into a loop. First, you add salt. Stir the soup and taste it. You might then repeat the process by adding more salt, stirring, and tasting again. There are two main types of loops. A for loop is used when we know the number of times we need to repeat the loop. For example, the recipe might specify to add salt, stir, and taste exactly 3 times. A while loop, on the other hand, continues until a specific condition is met. For example, you might keep adding salt, stirring, and tasting until the soup tastes good. Once the desired condition is met, you exit the loop, resulting in perfectly seasoned soup. Let's analyze an investment example. Suppose we want to invest $1,000, known as the present value, in an investment that offers 8% compound annual interest, and we want to know the value of the investment, known as the future value, for every year for a duration of exactly 15 years. We can refer to the equation at the top. To solve this, we could use a loop. At year 0, we start with $1,000. At year 1, we have our original $1,000 plus $80 from the 8% interest, totaling $1,080. The next year, we would have $1,166. We continue this calculation each year for 15 years, ultimately determining that by year 15, our investment grows to $3,172. In this case, we use a for loop because we know in advance that we need to repeat the calculation exactly 15 times. We could also modify our question. Instead of asking what the future value would be in 15 years, we could ask how many years will it take for our investment to double. Starting with $1,000 at year 0, it grows to $1,080 at year 1. Since it hasn't doubled, we perform another calculation. We continue this process until our investment doubles. In this case, the investment doubles somewhere between years 9 and 10. At this point, we exit the loop. Here we implement a while loop because the calculation is repeated until the future value is greater than or equal to $2,000. Although we can solve the equation in the left by extracting the year t, in this example we're solving it using loops. One thing to be careful with when using while loops is that if the exit condition is not properly defined, you may end up with an infinite loop. For example, if we try to determine the number of years for our investment to reach less than $0, we will be stuck in the loop forever since this condition will never be met. When working with loops, consider using the break statement, which allows us to exit the loop prematurely, the continue statement, which skips the rest of the code inside the current loop iteration and moves to the next one, and the pass statement, which is a placeholder that does nothing. Additionally, we can use nested loops, which are loops inside other loops. Let's see how we can solve this problem using Python. Let's start with a present value of $1,000, our interest rate of 8%, and the number of years is going to be 15. We're going to use a for loop that goes in the range of the years plus 1. So it goes from 0 to 16. The 16 is not inclusive, so it goes from 0 to 15, one by one. Once we're here, we're going to calculate the future value, which is our present value multiplied times 1 plus r, and we're going to raise this to the power of the number of years. Let's encapsulate this inside a round statement to make sure that we only have 2 decimal places. Finally, let's add a print statement. We're going to use the F string, and we're going to print out the year of I, and we're going to print out also what the future value is for that year. We encapsulate this in the curly brackets. Let's run this code, and we can see we have all the calculations from year 0 all the way up to year 15. We can also solve the question of how many years it's going to take to double the investment using while loops. We start with our present value of $1,000, our interest rate of 8%, our limit, which is going to be twice our present value, and the number of years that we want to calculate. Let's start with years of 0. Now, we want our future value to start with 0, and we're going to do the calculation. So while our future value is less or equal than our limit, then we're going to make our calculation of our future value, which is our present value multiplied by 1 plus r raised to the power of years. Let's make sure we have our parentheses in the right places. We're going to round this up to have 2 decimal places. Now we're going to add a print statement where we're going to print out the year and the future value. And finally, after every loop, we're going to increase our year by 1 year. So let's run this, and we can see that the while loop stops at exactly year 10, where our investment has doubled. If you like this video, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content.